emotional distress, medical proximity to Lucas. I almost laughed. Medical proximity to her ex, as grounds to live in my house. Tell Elise no. She already did, but expect drama. Drama arrived at 3:30 p.m. in the form of 3 cars, 6 relatives, and Natalie standing on my front porch with 2 suitcases. I watched it happen through the doorbell camera from my truck. 2 blocks away, Mara beside me. We'd been on our way to meet the property manager when the motion alert came through. Denise rang the bell 3 times. Robert knocked with the side of his fist. Caleb walked around the side yard and tried the gate. Locked. Natalie stood still, arms wrapped around herself, thinner than before, her hair unwashed and pulled into a loose knot. It would have hurt more to see her that way if she hadn't been flanked by people who'd clearly come to collect whatever they believed grief entitled them to. Denise spoke into the camera. Adrien, open this door. Natalie lives here. You cannot just erase her. I pressed the talk button. You've been instructed to contact counsel. Denise jumped at the sound of my voice, then leaned toward the camera. Don't hide behind a speaker. Don't trespass on my property. Caleb looked up. Your property, man. Unbelievable. Mara raised an eyebrow. Want to go? Yes. By the time we got there, a neighbor was pretending to water a lawn that didn't need it, and another was watching from behind her curtains. The Mercers had turned my front yard into the second public hearing of the week. I got out of the truck with Mara. Natalie saw me and stepped forward. Adrien, I need clothes. I need my things. You can schedule supervised access. This is humiliating. You chose the audience. She is your wife, Denise snapped. She's a party in a divorce. Robert pointed at the house. Her name may not be on the deed, but she lived here 7 years. Yes, I said. And she removed documents from it while I was in a hospital ethics meeting. That's why access is supervised now. The neighbor gave up, pretending not to listen. Natalie flushed. I took my own things. You took the donor packet, the medical folder, and my old insurance binder. Her eyes flickered. Mara stepped in. All of it's requested in Discovery now. Preserve it, by the way. Caleb laughed bitterly. Discovery. Listen to you people. This is family. I turned to him. Family doesn't make me less entitled to receipts. He stepped closer. You think because you've got money you can bully everyone? Mara held up her phone. I'm recording. Continue. He stopped. I walked up to the porch and handed Natalie a printed form. Choose 2 dates. You can collect personal clothing, toiletries, and work materials with a third-party present. Nothing else leaves without inventory. She stared at the form. This was our bed, she whispered. It was also where you slept while moving money to Lucas. Her face tightened. I told you. I didn't sleep with him. You also told me he was your cousin. That landed in front of everyone. Denise hissed. Adrien. No, I said, turning to her. You don't get to control the tone anymore. You're enjoying humiliating her, Robert said. I'm enjoying not being silent. Natalie looked toward the upstairs window. I planted the lavender. I chose the curtains. I hosted Christmas here. I built the porch after your mother's hip surgery. I paid the taxes, I said. I paid the mortgage. I replaced the roof. I refinanced before we married. I asked you twice if you wanted to buy in and share ownership. You told me real estate paperwork stressed you out. Her lips parted. Mara added, the deed is clear. The premarital valuation is clear. The improvements were paid primarily through Adrien's separate business account. Your attorney can argue marital contribution, but you cannot force entry today. Denise looked lost. Legal facts had a way of killing moral theater. Then Lucas arrived. He shouldn't have. Even Natalie looked shocked when a rideshare pulled up and he stepped out slowly, leaning on a cane. Fragile looking, but not too fragile to perform. Adrien, he called from the sidewalk. This is enough. I turned. The neighbors were definitely watching now. Lucas approached with that careful, tragic dignity he'd been cultivating online. Gray hoodie, hospital bracelet, eyes moving from the house to Natalie's suitcases to me. Let her inside, he said. Punish me if you need to, not her. Lucas. Why are you here? Natalie whispered. He ignored her. I looked at the rideshare still idling at the curb. Did my household account pay for that ride, too? His expression flickered. Good, I said. That's the problem with evidence, Lucas. You start hearing it everywhere. He leaned on the cane. I came because she called me crying. Natalie closed her eyes. Denise looked at her daughter. You called him? Natalie opened her eyes, panic rising. I was upset. I nodded once. Thank you. Her face crumpled. Stop saying that every time I make a mistake. I'm not thanking you for the mistake. I'm thanking you for making the pattern visible. Lucas's jaw tightened. You think you're so controlled, but everyone can see what this is. You're jealous. I stepped down off the porch. Mara said softly, Adrien. But I waved her off. I stopped 6 feet from Lucas. Jealousy is wanting what another man has, I said. I don't want anything you have. His face hardened. I want back what you took. Money, truth, consent, peace. Lucas leaned closer, lowering his voice. Natalie came to me because you never made her feel alive. My phone was already in my hand, recording. Say more, I said. He smiled slightly, thinking he'd cut me. She married safety. She loved me. You were just the reliable guy, the house, the savings, the clean credit. Do you know how many nights she sat beside me and said she wished things had been different? Natalie gasped. Lucas, stop. But he'd started bleeding truth, and truth doesn't clot easily. He looked at her. Why? He should know. Denise's face had gone gray. Robert stared at Lucas like he'd finally understood the shape of the insult he'd just delivered. Lucas turned back to me. You want to ruin her? Fine. But don't pretend she didn't choose me when it mattered. I stopped the recording. That'll help in court, too. Lucas's smile died. Natalie covered her face. A police cruiser rounded the corner and rolled up to the curb. Mara had called while Lucas was still talking, of course. An officer stepped out. We received a call about a trespassing dispute. I handed him the deed, the separation notice, the access arrangement, and the attorney contact sheet. Mara gave him her card. Denise tried to explain family. Robert tried to explain fairness. Caleb tried to argue I was unstable, until Mara offered to replay the footage of him stepping toward me. Lucas said nothing at all. The officer listened, then turned to Natalie. Ma'am, you'll need to arrange access through counsel, or come back with a civil standby at an agreed time. You can't force entry today. Natalie looked at the house, then at me. Really at me, for the first time. I watched the panic go all the way through her. Not because she missed the house, or not just that, because the house was proof. Proof that the life she'd thought she could bend around Lucas had belonged, this whole time, to someone she'd pushed too far. She lifted her suitcase handle with a shaking hand. Adrien, she said. I did love you. I looked past her. At Lucas standing a few feet back, at the officer holding my deed, at the neighbors who'd have something to talk about for months. I believe you loved what I carried, I said. She flinched like I'd finally found the one nerve that mattered. Then she got into Denise's car. Lucas stood alone on the sidewalk a few seconds too long. The rideshare driver honked once. Your ride's waiting, I said. His eyes burned with hatred. She'll come back to me. I shook my head. Lucas, she never left you. That's the problem. The hospital ethics room was smaller than I'd expected. I pictured something like a courtroom. Polished wood. Flags. Instead it was a conference room. A long table, a wall screen, bad coffee, and a printed agenda that somehow made Betrayal look administrative. Donor advocate, transplant director, compliance officer, HR representative, legal counsel, Dr. Heller, Isaac Reed, Natalie Mercer Vale, Lucas Kain, Adrien Vale, counsel. Mara sat to my left, Graham to my right, Elise joined by video. Divorce court didn't wait for a medical scandal to calm down. Natalie walked in wearing a black dress and no jewelry. Professional, careful, almost fragile. She'd prepared. I could see it in the folder she carried and the way she kept her eyes lowered just enough to invite sympathy without looking like she was working for it. Lucas came in the wheelchair again. The Kain had disappeared. The wheelchair made better theater. The transplant director, Dr. Asha Menon, opened the meeting. This review concerns the circumstances surrounding the cancelled living donor hepatectomy scheduled for Adrien Vale. Intended recipient Lucas Kain. This is not a criminal proceeding. This is an internal ethics and compliance review, though findings may be referred to appropriate external authorities. Natalie's fingers tightened on her folder. Lucas stared at the table. Dr. Menon turned to me. Mr. Vale, you may begin with your statement. I didn't read from paper. I wanted them to hear me as a person, not a complaint. My wife told me Lucas Kain was a distant family member, named Luke Mercer. She asked me to be tested as a living donor. I agreed because I believed I was helping her family. I was not told Mr. Kain was her former romantic partner. I was not told household funds had been transferred to him for months. I was not told my wife used hospital access to describe him as family by marriage. I found out while I was marked for surgery. I withdrew consent before anesthesia. I believe my consent process was compromised by deception and pressure. No one spoke for a moment. The compliance officer, Mr. Baird, asked, "Did anyone on staff pressure you to continue after withdrawal?" No. Dr. Heller, the donor advocate, and the transplant coordinator stopped the procedure immediately. Dr. Heller looked relieved, but not happy. Baird turned to Natalie. Mrs. Vale, your response. Natalie opened her folder but didn't look at it. I made a terrible mistake. That was new. Not enough, but new. I didn't believe Adrien would agree to donate if he knew Lucas and I had dated in college. I thought he'd focus on the past instead of the medical need. I used the phrase family by marriage because Lucas had been part of my life for a long time. It was wrong. I know that now. Mara wrote something down. Natalie kept going, her voice trembling. But I didn't intend to harm Adrien. I believed the donor team had cleared him medically. I believed the surgery was safe. I was desperate to save someone. Someone who wasn't your husband, Graham said, leaning forward. Natalie closed her eyes. Dr. Menon asked, Mrs. Vale, did you disclose your prior romantic relationship with Mr. Kain to the donor advocate, the coordinator, or the transplant psychologist? No. Did Mr. Kain? Lucas cleared his throat. I assumed Natalie had. Mara looked up. Convenient. Dr. Menon's eyes cut to her. Mara smiled politely. Apologies. Continue. Baird pulled the access logs up on the wall screen, rows of dates, times, user IDs, file entries. Natalie's hospital employee login appeared again and again. Donor relationship note edited. Recipient family contact updated. Financial coordination note viewed. Living donor file opened after business hours. The room grew colder with every line. HR asked, Mrs. Vale, can you explain after-hours access to your husband's donor file? Natalie swallowed. I was anxious. I wanted to make sure everything was complete. That wasn't within your job duties. No. Did anyone authorize you? No. Dr. Menon turned to Lucas. Mr. Kain, were you aware Mrs. Vale had access to donor records? Lucas shifted. She mentioned she could check scheduling. Did you ask her to? I don't remember. Graham clicked his pen once. We can help with that. He slid a printed message across the table. Lucas to Natalie. Can you check if A's psych note says anything about hesitation? Need to know if he might bail. Her reply, I'll look after shift. Don't text that again. The HR representative shut her eyes briefly. Dr. Menon read the page, then looked at Lucas. You remembered enough to ask. Lucas's jaw tightened. I was scared. Fear seems to be doing a lot of work for both of you, Mara said. Mara, please, Natalie whispered. Mara didn't look at her. The donor advocate spoke next, her voice gentle but firm. Living donation depends on voluntary consent, free from coercion. Emotional ties are common. Pressure is common. That's precisely why disclosure matters. Mr. Vale's consent was compromised if material facts were intentionally withheld. Natalie looked at me. I could see her finally understanding that the issue was bigger than my anger, bigger than our marriage, bigger even than Lucas's need. She hadn't just betrayed me. She'd contaminated the one part of medicine that depends on trust before anyone gets cut open. Lucas glanced around the room and seemed to realize sympathy was no longer guaranteed. "Can I say something?" he asked. Dr. Menon nodded. He turned toward me, voice soft. "Adrien, I'm sorry you were hurt, but I never forced you. You went through the tests. You signed. At some point, you made a choice. It doesn't seem fair to put all of this on Natalie because you regret being generous." The old me might have answered, might have explained, defended, tried to make them understand. Instead, I took out my phone and played the recording from the porch. Lucas's own voice filled the room. "She married safety. She loved me. You were just the reliable guy, the house, the savings, the clean credit." Natalie covered her mouth. Lucas stared at the phone. The recording kept going. "Do you know how many nights she sat beside me and said she wished things had been different?" I stopped it there. The ethics room went silent. "Would you like to revise your earlier statement?" Mara asked Lucas. "About not participating in the deception?" His face reddened. "That was a private argument. That was a statement against interest," Graham said. "In a property dispute, a medical coercion review, and potentially a fraud investigation." Dr. Menon turned to Natalie. "Mrs. Vale, did you have ongoing emotional involvement with Mr. Kain during the donor evaluation period?" Natalie's eyes were wet. "Yes, barely a whisper, but it was enough." HR closed the folder in front of them. The compliance officer spoke. "Pending final review, Mrs. Vale remains on administrative leave. We'll refer the access violations to licensing review and determine whether external reporting is required. Mr. Kain's transplant candidacy with this center is paused, pending review of the donor-recipient file and the financial representations made." Lucas jerked upright. "Paused? You can't do that." Dr. Menon's expression didn't change. "We can and we must. You're letting him kill me." "No," she said. "We're ensuring no transplant proceeds under compromised ethics." Lucas looked at Natalie for the first time, not with love, with anger. "You said you could fix this," he snapped. Natalie recoiled. There he was again. Stripped of illness, stripped of cameras, stripped of audience. A man who'd decided her usefulness had run out. I watched her finally see it. It should have felt satisfying. It mostly just felt late. After the meeting, Graham and Mara stayed behind with compliance. I walked toward the parking garage alone and made it as far as the vending machines before Lucas found me. He was standing now, one hand braced on the wall, breathing hard. No wheelchair, no mother, no camera. "Are you proud?" he asked. I turned. "No. You ruined my chance. You helped ruin it." He laughed, bitter. "You don't even love her anymore, do you?" "No." The word came out easily. That surprised both of us. His eyes narrowed. "Then let her go. Drop the complaints. Let Natalie come to me. You can keep your money, keep your house. Just stop choking off the only chance I have." I studied him. "You still think this is about getting Natalie? What else is it?" "My body." He rolled his eyes, and that small movement burned off whatever restraint I had left. I stepped closer, not enough to threaten, enough to make him focus. "You watched me get prepped for surgery. You knew I thought you were her cousin. You let me lie there with a line drawn across my stomach because my pain was useful to you." His mouth tightened. "You want a second chance at life?" I said. "Start by telling the truth about the first one you tried to steal from me." He leaned in, voice low. "You think truth saves you? Natalie will crawl back the second she's lonely. Men like you always take women like her back because you need to feel chosen." I pulled my phone from my pocket. His eyes dropped to it. I smiled without any warmth in it. "You keep forgetting I learn." He backed away. When I reached the truck, Natalie was waiting beside it. In the gray garage light, she looked smaller than I remembered. "Adrien," she said, "I heard what he said to you." "Which part?" "He says a lot." Her eyes filled. He was angry. He was honest. She took a step toward me. I made him into something he isn't. I think I did. I kept remembering who he was before he got sick. I unlocked the truck. That sounds like your therapist's future problem. She flinched. I deserve that. No, I said. You deserve consequences. That was just a sentence. She wrapped her arms around herself. Can we talk without lawyers? Just once? I looked at her across the hood of the truck. You had 7 years without lawyers. Her face crumpled. I got in and closed the door. As I drove out of the garage, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. Drop the fundraiser complaint or I'll tell everyone what kind of husband you really were. Attached. A photo of Natalie asleep in a hospital chair beside Lucas's bed. I forwarded it to Graham, then blocked the number. The live stream was scheduled like a charity concert. Lucas's supporters had announced it 12 hours after the ethics review. Graphics, a countdown, a prayer circle, and a guest appearance from a local influencer who'd once interviewed firefighters after a warehouse blaze. Natalie hadn't promoted it from her own account, which told me she knew enough to be afraid. But she appeared in the thumbnail. Face turned toward Lucas, soft and tragic, his hand over hers. The caption read, "Love, loss, and the fight for a second chance." Mara sent me the screenshot with one sentence. He's laundering fraud through romance now. I was at the lake house when it came in. I'd driven out there after the ethics meeting, because the city felt too loud and my own house felt like evidence. The lake house wasn't beautiful in any polished way. Old cedar, uneven floors, a dock missing half its boards, a furnace that complained at night. But it was mine. I'd bought it years before Natalie, back when my father died and left me just enough money for a down payment and one piece of advice. Own one place nobody can take from you. I'd forgotten the second half of that. At 6:50 p.m. Mara arrived with takeout, her laptop, and enough legal aggression to power the house through a storm. Graham joined by video. Elise too. Tasha texted that 3 clients had called to say they stood by me after seeing Lucas's earlier posts. One had written, "We don't know the whole story, but we know your work. Kindness, unexpected and simple, hit harder than the insults ever could." At 7 p.m. Lucas went live. Dark sweater instead of a hospital gown. Better choice, less desperate, more dignified. The influencer sat beside him, nodding seriously. Natalie sat slightly behind, out of focus, hands clasped. "Coward," Mara muttered. "Tonight we're here with Lucas Kain," the influencer began, "a former firefighter who's been through unimaginable betrayal." Graham started recording on our end. Lucas lowered his gaze. "I don't like the word betrayal." Mara rolled her eyes. "I think people get scared," he went on. "I think sometimes jealousy makes good people do harmful things." The chat filled with hearts. Then the influencer turned to Natalie. "You've been by Lucas's side through all of this. What has that been like?" Natalie stiffened for a second. I thought she might refuse. Instead, she leaned forward. "It's been devastating. Lucas is a good man. He deserves care. He deserves dignity." Mara paused the video and stared at the screen. She just chose. On camera. I said nothing. She hit resume. "And your husband?" the influencer asked. Natalie's face tightened. "My marriage is private." "Good answer," Mara said, tight-lipped. Then Lucas reached back and took Natalie's hand. Bad silence. The chat exploded. "Is that the wife? Wait, are they together? Poor Lucas." The influencer smiled like blood had hit the water. "There's been a lot of discussion online about your relationship. Anything you want to clarify?" Natalie opened her mouth. Lucas answered first. "Natalie and I have loved each other, in different ways, for a long time." "Idiot," Mara whispered at the screen. Natalie looked stunned. "Lucas." He turned to her, eyes shining. "It's time to be honest." I leaned back. Truth wasn't always noble. Sometimes it was just arrogance wearing a clean shirt. Lucas looked into the camera. "She married someone else. I respected that. But when I got sick, she showed up. That's what real love does. It shows up." My phone buzzed. A message from Denise. Is this true? Did Natalie and Lucas continue seeing each other? I didn't answer. On screen, Natalie's face had gone white. She was trapped. Deny him and look cruel. Agree and destroy herself. The influencer pressed. So the donor who withdrew was her husband? Lucas smiled sadly. Yes. And he knew your history? No, Natalie said quickly. The room at the lake house went completely still. Lucas turned toward her. What? Natalie swallowed. Adrien didn't know. Not at first. The chat went wild. Mara leaned toward the laptop. There she is. The influencer's eyes widened. He didn't know? Natalie looked like she wanted the floor to open up beneath her. No, she whispered. I should have told him. Lucas's face darkened. Natalie, not now. But now had already arrived. Graham's voice came calmly through the tablet. I'm sending the evidence packet to the platform's compliance contact right now. Mara, send the timestamp. Her fingers flew across the keyboard. The live stream kept falling apart in real time. The influencer tried to regain control. So, just to be clear, your husband agreed to donate without knowing Lucas was your former partner? Yes, Natalie whispered. He agreed to save my life, Lucas snapped. The past shouldn't matter. A comment flashed and pinned briefly before vanishing. Then why lie? Another, this is medical coercion. Another, refund my donation. Lucas saw the chat turning on him. Panic crossed his face. He leaned toward the camera. People are twisting this. The donor backed out because he couldn't handle that Natalie cared about me. Natalie stood up suddenly. I can't do this. Lucas grabbed her wrist. On camera. Natalie, sit down. She looked at his hand around her wrist. So did thousands of viewers. Oh, Lucas, Mara murmured. Natalie pulled free. I said I can't. The stream cut out for 3 seconds. The frozen image of Lucas reaching for her hanging on every screen. Then the page disappeared. Graham's voice came through. Platform froze the account. Mara refreshed the fundraiser page. Campaign under review. I sat back and exhaled. It should have felt like victory. Instead it felt like the exhaustion of watching a building burn down after you'd spent years paying the mortgage on it. My phone rang. Natalie. This time I answered, not because I wanted to hear her voice, but because I wanted the call recorded through the app Graham had installed. She was crying so hard she could barely get words out. I didn't know he'd say that. I didn't know he'd make it sound like we were together. Did he lie? Silence. Traffic noise behind her. She was outside somewhere. Not completely, she whispered. The words landed softly, but they didn't surprise me. That was how I knew the marriage had already died a month earlier. 2 words that might have gutted me once now just confirmed the autopsy. What does not completely mean? I asked. She sobbed once. We kissed. Once, maybe twice. I was scared, and he was sick, and I felt like I owed him because I left him years ago. I closed my eyes. Mara looked at me, her face hard with grief on my behalf. When? I asked. Last year? Before or after you started sending him money? After. Before or after you asked me to get tested? Silence. I opened my eyes. Natalie. Yes, she whispered. Mara looked away. I hadn't thought there was another floor beneath the one I was already standing on. There was. I kept my voice steady. Do not contact me directly again, except regarding access to personal property. Tell your attorney everything you just told me. Please don't hang up. I'm scared. You should be. I don't have anywhere to go. You have your parents. My mother won't look at me. My father left the house. That's not my emergency. She cried harder. I destroyed everything. No, I said. You made choices. Everything else is just responding to them. A long pause. Then, did you ever really love me, if you can be this cold? I looked out at the lake. Dark water. A thin line of moonlight. The dock my father had warned me to fix before it collapsed. Here's a cleaned-up version of that opening scene. Same details, same beats, written in natural human prose instead of the choppy transcription. The anesthesiologist had already drawn a line across my abdomen when I heard my wife say another man's name. Not my name. Not the name of the distant cousin she'd cried over for 3 months. Lucas Kain. She said it softly, but the operating prep room was too quiet for secrets. The machines beside me beeped in low, steady rhythm. A nurse adjusted the 4 tape to my hand. Cold antiseptic dried on my skin. I lay under a thin blue surgical sheet, already shaved, already marked, already minutes away from giving up part of my liver. Then Natalie said, "Lucas can't wait another day. Adrien understands that." I turned my head. She stood near the glass doors with Dr. Heller, arms folded over the cream sweater I'd bought her last winter. Her eyes were red, but not from fear for me. They were fixed on the hallway beyond the doors, where the recipient team was getting ready. Lucas. The name moved through my mind like a blade. For 3 months she'd told me his name was Luke Mercer. A distant relative. A man with no one else. A man whose liver was failing and whose insurance wouldn't cover half the cost. She'd sat at our kitchen island with both hands wrapped around a mug and said, "He has nobody, Adrien. You always say family shows up." And I had shown up. The blood tests, the scans, the psychological evaluation. I'd signed the donor packet. I'd listened while doctors laid out the risks in careful legal language. Bile leaks, infection, bleeding, rare but possible death. Natalie had cried into my chest afterward and whispered, "I don't deserve you." At the time, I thought she meant it. Now she turned and caught me staring. Her face changed for half a second. It wasn't guilt. It was calculation. "Adrien," she said, coming toward the bed quickly. "Why are you sitting up? You're supposed to stay calm." I looked past her, through the glass. A man in a hospital gown sat in a wheelchair outside the opposite prep room. Thinner than the man in the old photos I'd once found buried in Natalie's college storage box. But the face was the same. Sharp jaw, dark hair, a weak, practiced smile. Lucas Kain, Natalie's first love. The man she'd told me she hadn't spoken to in 10 years. A tremor went through my hand, but my voice stayed flat. "I am not donating part of my body to a man you lied about." The nurse froze. Natalie's mouth opened slightly. "Don't do this here. Where would you prefer I do it? After they cut me open?" Dr. Heller looked between us. "Mr. Vale, are you withdrawing consent?" Natalie stepped between us before I could answer. "No." He's scared. He gets like this when he's overwhelmed. I stared at her. 7 years of marriage, and she still thought calm meant weak. She reached for my hand. I moved it away. My thumb brushed the edge of my phone beneath the folded blanket. I'd started recording 3 minutes earlier, the moment I heard Lucas's name. I hadn't known exactly what I was capturing then. Now I did. "Adrien," Natalie whispered. "Please, Lucas will die." "Then you should have told me who he was." "He was part of my life a long time ago. You told me he was family." "He is family to me." The nurse's eyes lifted. That sentence landed in the room like a dropped instrument. I laughed once, quietly, not because anything was funny, but because my body was lying on a surgical table for a man my wife still called family, while I'd been treated like a useful spare part. Dr. Heller's expression tightened. "Mrs. Vale, I need to speak with the donor directly." Natalie turned on him. "Doctor, this is not the time." "It's exactly the time," I said. She looked back at me, and the softness vanished. "Don't embarrass everyone. Be mature for once. You already agreed. Lucas is prepped. His team is waiting. His mother is outside praying. Do you want all of them watching you back out because of old jealousy?" There it was. Not fear for my life. Not an apology. Not even panic over what she'd done. Just the same old sentence in a new form. Be mature. Don't embarrass me. Let it go. I looked at the woman whose tuition I'd paid when she went back for her certification, whose parents lived in a house I'd helped save from foreclosure, who drove a car under my company insurance because she said the hospital parking garage felt safer in an SUV. The woman who had slept beside me while moving money to her ex and calling it mercy. "I'm done being mature at my own expense," I said. Natalie's face flushed. "You don't mean that." "I withdraw consent." Dr. Heller turned to the nurse. Stop the prep. Notify the transplant coordinator and ethics team. Natalie's hand flew to her mouth. No. The nurse removed the cap from the line. The room shifted from surgical rhythm to emergency paperwork. A second nurse appeared at the door. Dr. Heller lowered his voice and began explaining that I had the right to withdraw consent at any time before anesthesia. I already knew that. The donor advocate had said it twice. Natalie had been in the room both times. She leaned close, lowering her voice so only I could hear. If he dies because of you, I will never forgive you. I turned my head toward my phone, making sure the microphone caught every word. If I die because of this surgery, I said. Who gets the house, Natalie? She blinked. What? The house, the rental properties, my company account, the life insurance. Who gets it? Her lips parted, then pressed together before she could answer. Lucas's wheelchair stopped outside the glass. He looked in, pale and narrow under the fluorescent lights. For 1 second our eyes met. He smiled, small, private, ugly. Natalie saw him and moved toward the door. Lucas, don't worry. I'll fix this. I watched her go to him in the hallway. She crouched beside his wheelchair and took his hand. His hand. Not mine, the one with the 4 taped into it. The nurse beside me looked away, embarrassed for me. I wasn't embarrassed anymore. If you're enjoying our stories, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel. Your support means the world to us and helps us create more amazing content for you. We're on a mission to reach our first 1,000 subscribers, and every single subscription brings us one step closer. Thank you for being part of our journey. Embarrassment required some belief that this was still my marriage. That belief had ended the moment Natalie said his name like a prayer. I unlocked my phone with my left thumb. My sister answered on the second ring. Mara, I said, I'm at St. Meridian, surgical wing. Bring the emergency estate packet. Her voice sharpened instantly. What happened? Natalie lied. The recipient is Lucas Kain. Silence. Then, I'm on my way. Don't sign anything else. Don't let her near your phone. Don't let anyone sedate you. I withdrew consent. Good. I'll call Graham and the notary. Graham was my business attorney. Mara handled estates, trusts, and probate disputes. She'd been trying to get me to update my documents for 2 years. I always said there was time. Time looks different when your wife is standing outside a surgical room holding her ex-boyfriend's hand. Natalie came back in, anger simmering under her eyes. Who were you calling? My sister. Her face hardened. Of course. Mara never liked me. Mara never asked me to cut out part of my liver for her ex, she flinched. But only because the nurse heard it. Stop saying it like that. Natalie hissed. You're making it sound dirty. It is dirty. Lucas is sick. So am I said. Apparently. Just not in a way that matters to you. Her eyes filled with tears on command. I'd seen those tears soften my father-in-law, silence her mother, end arguments, turn blame into comfort. Once they'd worked on me too. This time I watched them like weather behind glass. You promised, she whispered. I promised to help a person you described honestly. You turned my promise into consent under false pretenses. That is such a legal way to talk about someone's life. No, it's a precise way. Dr. Heller returned with a transplant coordinator and a woman from donor advocacy. Natalie straightened, switching back into the voice she used at work. Polished, suffering, reasonable. My husband is having an emotional reaction, she said. He found out Lucas and I dated in college, and now he's punishing a dying man. The donor advocate looked at me, not her. Mr. Vale, do you feel pressured to proceed with donation? Yes. Natalie inhaled sharply. By whom? The advocate asked. My wife, Natalie snapped. And by the recipient, I added, looking through the glass. Lucas was still watching. I was told he was my wife's distant cousin. I was not told he was her ex. I was not told my household money had been paying his rent and medical bills. I want all consent paperwork frozen. I want copies. I want my donor file reviewed by ethics. The advocate's expression changed in a way Natalie clearly didn't like. "Mr. Vale," she said carefully, "we will document your withdrawal and initiate review." Natalie grabbed the bed rail. "You are killing him." I looked at her hand, then at her face. "No," I said. "I am saving myself." That was when Mara arrived, through the prep room doors in a navy suit, hair clipped back, a tablet under one arm and a leather folder under the other. She looked at me first, not Natalie. Her eyes flicked over the surgical marks, the hospital sheet, and something dark passed across her face. Then she turned to my wife. "Move." Natalie drew herself up. "This is between me and my husband." Mara stepped closer. "No. This is between my brother, his body, his assets, and the woman who appears to have lied to obtain access to all three." The room went silent. For the first time that morning, Natalie looked scared. Not sorry, scared. Mara laid the folder on the rolling tray beside my bed. "Adrien, Graham's on video. The mobile notary is in the lobby. I brought the revocation of healthcare proxy, the amended durable power of attorney, the trust assignment, and the beneficiary change instructions you drafted but never executed." Natalie stared at the folder. "What is that?" "My first realistic decision today," I said. Her eyes snapped to mine. "You cannot be serious." "I have never been more serious." Mara opened the folder. "We need 2 witnesses. Hospital staff can witness the healthcare proxy revocation if policy allows, but not the asset transfer. The notary's coming up." Natalie stepped forward. "Adrien, listen to me. You're angry. Don't make a permanent decision over a misunderstanding." I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw the woman I had loved standing in the wreckage of what she'd chosen. "A misunderstanding is when you forget to tell me dinner changed from 7 to 8. I said. "This was a plan." Her lower lip trembled. "I was desperate for him." She said nothing after that. I signed the first document with a hand that still had the 4 taped to it. Revocation of Natalie Mercer Vale as my healthcare proxy. My signature looked uneven, but it was mine. Mara slid the second document forward. Assignment of my separate assets into the Vale Family Recovery Trust, with Mara Vale as trustee. The lake house, the rental duplexes, my company shares, the brokerage account I'd built over 15 years. Everything I could legally move on emergency execution. Everything Natalie had assumed would pass through her hands if the surgery went wrong. I signed. Natalie made a sound like I'd struck her. "Adrien." I signed again. The notary entered, breathless. 2 hospital administrators behind her. Mara handled the introductions. Graham appeared on the tablet, his face grim from his office across town. The process was ugly and fast and clinical: capacity questions, witness confirmations, identity verification. My answers were clear. Yes, I knew where I was. Yes, I understood what I was signing. Yes, I was acting voluntarily. No, I was not under any medication that impaired my judgment. No, my wife was not to make medical decisions for me. Natalie stood against the wall, arms wrapped around herself. She looked smaller now, but not innocent. Lucas waited outside, no longer smiling once the last page was sealed. Mara closed the folder. "Done," she said. I exhaled. Something inside me settled. Not healed. Not calm. Settled. Natalie stepped toward me, tears spilling now. "So you're just going to throw away 7 years?" I looked at the surgical line still marked across my skin. "No," I said. "I'm keeping what's left of them from killing me." My phone buzzed on the tray. A bank alert lit the screen. Transfer posted, $38,500 from Vale Household Emergency, reserved to Meridian Patient Deposit Account. Recipient memo, L. Kain transplant balance. Natalie saw it at the same moment I did. Her face went white. Mara picked up the phone, read the alert, and looked at my wife. "That," she said softly, "was a very expensive mistake." The hospital moved fast once lawyers were involved. Not fast enough to undo what Natalie had done, but fast enough to stop the blade from ever touching me. A nurse cleared away the last of the surgical prep equipment while the donor advocate documented my withdrawal. The blue sheet was replaced with a warm blanket. The 4 stayed in my hand. Stress had driven my pulse up, and nobody wanted me collapsing in the middle of a transplant scandal. Natalie tried 3 different voices in 10 minutes. The first was the wife voice, soft, hurt, trembling. Adrien, please look at me. We can talk privately. The second was the hospital professional voice, calm, controlled, faintly offended. I work in patient coordination. I understand how emotional donor anxiety can become. The third was the one she used when she thought no one important was listening. You are ruining my life because your ego got bruised. I looked at Mara. Mara looked at the donor advocate. The donor advocate wrote something down. Natalie realized too late that the hallway outside the prep room had become a stage. Lucas's mother stood near the nurse's station, clutching a rosary. 2 of Lucas's friends hovered behind her, both wearing wristbands from some charity event. My mother-in-law, Denise Mercer, arrived in a camel coat and pearls, already crying before she knew which version of the story would earn her the most sympathy. My father-in-law, Robert, came in behind her with his jaw set in that old familiar way, the one that meant he'd already decided I was the problem. Adrien, Denise said, the moment she saw me sitting upright on the rolling bed. What have you done? I almost smiled, not because anything was funny, but because her first instinct was still to ask what I'd done. Not why I'd withdrawn, not whether I was okay, not why her daughter had lied. Just what have you done? I stopped a surgery, I said. You promised to save him. I promised under false information. Lucas's mother looked up sharply. False information? My son is dying. I don't doubt he's sick, I said. I doubt everything else. Lucas appeared at the far end of the hall in his wheelchair, a nurse pushing him, one hand raised like a saint being led to trial. Adrien, he said weakly, man to man, don't punish Natalie for caring. Mara made a small sound beside me, not quite a laugh. I turned toward him. The hallway was full now. Nurses moving slower than they needed to, a security guard near the elevator, administrators pretending very hard not to listen while listening. Man to man, I asked. Lucas lowered his eyes. I know this hurts, finding out about the past. But she chose you. Did she? Stop, Natalie said, stepping forward. I held up my phone. Because from where I'm sitting, she chose to lie to me, chose to spend our money on you, chose to write you into my medical file as family, chose to push me toward surgery without ever telling me who you really were. Denise gasped. Natalie. Mom. Don't. Natalie snapped. One of Lucas's friends, a broad man with a shaved head, stepped forward. You're making this about money. He needs a liver. I'm making this about consent, I said. The donor advocate moved beside me. Mr. Vale has withdrawn consent. The procedure will not proceed. Lucas's mother began sobbing. Denise put an arm around her and glared at me like I'd personally caused both the disease and the rain outside. Robert jabbed a finger my way. You had a chance to do something noble, Adrien. Instead, you're standing here humiliating my daughter. No, Mara said before I could answer. Your daughter humiliated herself when she misrepresented the recipient's relationship to my brother. Robert's eyes narrowed. And you're the person who now controls his estate documents and medical authority, the legal file that's kept him quiet for almost 3 seconds. Natalie's face twisted. Mara, you've wanted this marriage to fail from day one. I wanted my brother not to be used, Mara said. You made that look prophetic. Lucas coughed into his fist. It sounded timed. Everyone looked at him anyway. He was good at this, the pale face, the lowered lashes, the fragile smile. He knew how to turn his own body into an accusation. Adrien, he said, I never wanted to cause problems between you two. My phone was still recording. Then why did you text my wife last night that once I signed, I couldn't back out without looking like a monster? The hallway went still. Natalie's head snapped toward Lucas. His weak smile vanished. Mara's gaze cut to me. You have that. I unlocked my phone and opened the screenshot I'd taken back in the prep room. Natalie had left her phone face up on the chair beside my clothes, and a message preview had lit the screen while she was out in the hall with Dr. Heller. From Lucas. Once he signs, he can't back out without looking like a monster. You know him, he'll swallow it if you cry. Below it, Natalie's reply, I hate this, but he'll do it. Adrien always does. I turned the screen outward. Denise stared at it. Robert's jaw dropped slightly. Lucas's mother stopped crying mid-breath. You went through my phone, Natalie whispered. It lit up beside my wedding ring. Hard to miss, I said. Lucas leaned back in his wheelchair. That's out of context. Mara smiled without any warmth in it at all. Wonderful. You'll enjoy giving the context to the ethics committee, then. The hospital administrator, a woman named Ms. Grant, cleared her throat. Mr. Vale, Mrs. Vale, Mr. Kain, we're moving this matter into a private conference room. Security will escort non-essential visitors off the surgical floor. Denise bristled. My daughter needs support. Your daughter may need counsel, Mara said. Natalie shot her a look full of hatred. I swung my legs slowly over the side of the bed. My abdomen still smelled of antiseptic. My hospital gown hung loose around my shoulders. I felt ridiculous and exposed, but I stood anyway, because lying down had started to feel too much like surrender. The nurse steadied my elbow. Mr. Vale, please be careful. I'm fine. I was not fine. My legs shook. My hand burned where the 4-tape pulled at my skin. My chest felt hollowed out. But I was upright. That mattered. Lucas watched me stand, the first time since I'd learned his name. He looked uncertain. Adrien, Natalie said quietly. You're sick with anger right now. This isn't you. I turned to her. This is the first time today I've sounded like myself. Her eyes filled again. She reached for me and I stepped back. The movement was small. The effect was not. Denise saw it. Robert saw it. Lucas saw it. Natalie saw it most of all. Her hand stayed suspended in the air. Empty. Ms. Grant guided us into a family consultation room down the hall. Beige walls, a square table, 6 chairs, and a box of tissues placed in the center, like the hospital expected grief to be tidy. Mara sat beside me. Graham stayed on video. Ms. Grant brought in the donor advocate, Dr. Heller, and a transplant coordinator named Isaac Reed. Natalie sat across from me. Lucas was wheeled in beside her, despite Mara's objection, on the grounds that he was the affected recipient. His mother wasn't allowed inside. Neither were the Mercers. The door closed. Isaac Reed opened a file. Mr. Vale, my understanding is you were told Mr. Kain was related to your wife by blood or extended family. Yes, Natalie said. I said he was like family. I looked at her. No, you said distant cousin. You said Merserside. You said your grandmother would want us to help. Isaac turned a page. The donor relationship explanation submitted in the preliminary file states, family by marriage. Mara leaned forward. Submitted by whom? Isaac hesitated. Ms. Grant answered instead. The entry appears to have been completed through Mrs. Vale's staff access. Natalie closed her eyes. Dr. Heller's mouth tightened. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. Mara did it for me. To be clear, Mrs. Vale used employee access to add or alter a relationship description in a living donor file involving her husband and her former romantic partner. That is not what happened, Natalie snapped. Then what happened? I asked. She turned to me, pleading. I was trying to avoid exactly this. You would have made it about him being my ex, and Lucas would have lost his chance. He should have lost the chance to get my organ under a lie. Lucas shifted in his wheelchair. I didn't ask her to lie. I looked at him. Did you know I thought you were her cousin? He looked away. The room answered for him. Mara wrote something on her legal pad. Graham's voice came through the tablet. We'll be requesting preservation of all donor-recipient communications, internal access logs, forms, consent recordings, and financial guarantee documents. Understood, Isaac said. Natalie looked at me like I'd become someone dangerous. Good. She was finally paying attention. I turned to Ms. Grant. There's also a deposit. $38,500. Transferred from my household emergency account to a patient deposit account under Mr. Kain's name. I did not authorize that. That money was for the hospital, Natalie said quickly. It was still helping the procedure you agreed to. No, Mara said. It was marital money moved without consent, for the benefit of a third party, under false pretenses. Lucas rubbed his forehead. I can't believe this. I'm dying and you people are arguing about paperwork. I leaned forward. That paperwork was attached to my body. He looked at me, and for a second the weak act slipped. There was resentment underneath. Not shame, resentment, as if I'd stolen something by keeping myself intact. You have another chance at life, he said. I might not. And you thought that entitled you to part of mine, Natalie whispered. Adrien. I didn't look at her. Ms. Grant folded her hands. Mr. Vale, the surgery is cancelled. Mr. Kain's care team will discuss alternative options with him separately. The hospital will conduct an internal review of the donor file. Mrs. Vale, pending that review, you'll be placed on administrative leave from patient coordination duties. Natalie's head jerked up. What? Effective immediately. Her face went blank. There it was, the first cost she hadn't expected. Not losing me, not yet. She still believed that could be mended with tears and time. But her job, her badge, her clean professional identity, that one reached her. Lucas turned to her. Natalie, do something. She just stared at Ms. Grant. I was trying to save a patient, Natalie said. You were trying to save your ex, Mara said. With my husband. The words hung in the room. No one corrected her. After the meeting, security escorted Lucas back toward his wing. His friends waited by the elevator, angry and confused. Denise and Robert descended on Natalie the moment she stepped out. What does administrative leave mean? Denise demanded. Natalie didn't answer. She looked at me instead. Adrien, come home, she said. I had already changed into the clothes Mara brought from my locker. Gray sweatpants, a black hoodie, shoes with no socks. My wedding ring was in Mara's folder. She'd taken it the moment I removed it and called it evidence of condition at execution. Because Mara could make even heartbreak procedural. I'm not going home with you, I said. Denise gasped. You cannot abandon your wife in a hospital. I looked at my mother-in-law. She abandoned me on a surgical table. Robert stepped closer. Watch your tone. Mara stepped between us. Do not threaten my client. Client, Natalie whispered. My brother, Mara said. And my client. I walked toward the elevator. Natalie followed. Adrien. Wait. I stopped, but didn't turn. You're angry now, she said. But when you calm down, you'll understand why I panicked. I turned then. No. When I calm down, I'll understand exactly how much you stole. Her face crumpled. My phone buzzed again, another bank alert. Denied transaction. Vale Company operating card. Merchant. Kain Residence Pharmacy. Amount. $481.27. Mara glanced at the screen, then at me. She tried to use the company card. Natalie's face gave the answer before her mouth could lie. I looked at my wife one last time in that hallway. Her badge suspended, her ex waiting for my organ. My money still bleeding toward both of them. Cancel every card, I told Mara. Adrien, please, Natalie whispered. The elevator doors opened, and this time I stepped inside without her. Mara drove because my hands wouldn't stop shaking. The city slid past the passenger window in strips of wet pavement, gray buildings, and morning traffic that didn't care that my marriage had collapsed somewhere between surgery prep and lunch. My abdomen still carried the purple line where the surgeon had planned to cut me open. Every time my hoodie brushed against it, I heard Natalie's voice again. Lucas can't wait another day. Mara didn't try to fill the silence. That was one of the reasons I loved my sister. She knew when words were help and when they were just noise at a red light. She handed me a bottle of water. Drink. I drank. Do you want to go to my place? She asked. No. I want to go home. Adrien. I know, I said. But if she's been moving money, there may be documents there. Laptops, old files. I need to secure them before her parents get involved. Mara's mouth tightened. They're already involved. My phone hadn't stopped buzzing since we left the hospital. Natalie had called 14 times. Denise, 6. Robert had texted once. You are behaving shamefully. A real husband stands by his wife in crisis. I stared at that message longer than it deserved. A real husband for 7 years. I tried to be exactly that. When Natalie's mother broke her hip, I built a ramp on the Mercer's porch and paid for the physical therapist when insurance ran out. When Robert's hardware store failed, I quietly covered 2 mortgage payments so Denise wouldn't lose the house she loved. When Natalie wanted to leave bedside nursing for patient coordination, I paid for the certification program and picked up overtime repair jobs until my hands cracked from winter work. I hadn't done any of it because I was stupid. I'd done it because I believed marriage meant building a shelter with your own hands, then letting everyone you loved stand under it. Natalie had turned that shelter into a waiting room for Lucas Kain. We reached the house at 11:42 a.m. It looked exactly the same, which felt insulting. White siding, blue door, the small maple tree out front, the porch swing I repaired every spring, the window boxes Natalie filled with lavender because she said it made us look like people who'd figured out peace. Mara parked behind my truck. Don't go in alone, she said. I'm not. She looked at me. I mean emotionally, too. I almost smiled. That sounds like something from a courtroom seminar. It is. It's also true. Inside, the house smelled faintly of coffee and Natalie's vanilla candle. Her coat was gone from the hook. Her laptop wasn't on the kitchen island. The drawer where we kept the household statements was half open. Mara saw it too. Photograph before touching, Mara said. I took pictures of the drawer, the island, the cabinet where our passports were kept. My passport was there. Natalie's was gone. So was the folder labeled medical donor packet. She came back while we were at the hospital, I said. Or someone did. I checked the doorbell camera on my phone. At 10:18 a.m. While I was in the ethics room, Denise had let herself into my house with the emergency key we'd given her after her hip surgery. Natalie was with her. Robert waited in the car. Natalie came out 8 minutes later carrying a tote bag. I saved the footage. Mara watched over my shoulder. Changed the locks today. Already calling. I called the locksmith I used for the rental properties. Then I called my bank. By noon, the joint household emergency account was frozen for review. By 12:20, every company card with Natalie's authorized user access was canceled. By 12:45, the car insurance policy had been amended. By 1:10, the property manager for my rental duplex confirmed no one but me had authority over leases, rent payments, or tenant communications. I didn't yell. I didn't break anything. I made calls. That's how you stop a structure from collapsing. Not by screaming at the crack in the wall, but by cutting the load before the beam gives. Mara sat at the dining table with her laptop open. Adrien. Something in her tone made my spine tighten. Come here. On the screen was a spreadsheet pulled from exported bank transactions. Mara had requested it through my online access. While I made calls, she'd sorted it by recipient. Kain Residence Pharmacy. Kain Recovery Fund. L. Kain Meridian Patient Deposit. Property management company I didn't recognize. A rideshare service. A boutique hotel downtown. The dates went back 18 months. The total made the room tilt. $126,400, I said. Mara's jaw was set. That's only from the accounts you can see quickly. I gripped the back of a chair. 18 months. Not 3. Not a sudden crisis when Lucas got sick. 18 months of money leaving my life while Natalie kissed me goodnight and asked whether I could pick up more almond milk. I clicked one transaction memo. For Luke's medication. Another. Temporary rent support. Another. Don't tell him yet. I'll make it right. I stared at the word him. Not Adrien. I'd been reduced to an obstacle in their accounting. The front door opened. Mara stood so fast her chair scraped the floor. Natalie stepped inside, followed by Denise. Natalie's eyes were swollen, but her chin was lifted. She changed clothes. Dark jeans, a hospital cardigan, hair pulled back. She looked like someone who'd rehearsed a conversation where she'd be the reasonable one and I'd be the cruel one. Then she saw the spreadsheet on the screen. Her face went pale. "What are you doing?" "Learning," I said. Denise shut the door behind her. "You froze the accounts." Natalie tried to pay for Lucas's medication, and the card was declined in front of everyone. "Good," I said. "Good," Denise repeated. "The poor man is fighting for his life." "So was I this morning." Natalie flinched. "Adrien, don't twist this." I turned the laptop toward her. "Explain it, then." She looked at the screen, then away. Denise stepped closer. "Married people share money. Natalie didn't steal. If she used joint funds to support a former romantic partner while concealing the relationship, and used that concealment to push Adrien into a medical donation." Mara started. "That's going to be an interesting argument in court," Denise said, sharp. "This family doesn't need legal threats." "This family seems to need them very badly," Mara said. Natalie threw up both hands. "Enough. Yes, I helped Lucas. He was sick. He had no one. I should have told you earlier, but every time I tried, I knew you'd react exactly like this." "Like what? Cold? Punishing? Counting every dollar?" I looked around the kitchen, at the counters I'd installed myself after long workdays, at the floor I'd paid to replace because Natalie hated the old tile, at the breakfast nook where I'd spent a dozen Sundays helping Denise sort through medical bills. Counting every dollar. I'd spent years not counting, because I trusted the person spending alongside me. "You moved $126,000, I said. "And that's before today." Her face tightened. "I was going to pay it back." "With what?" She had no answer. Denise did. "When Lucas recovered, he'd have gone back to work." Mara laughed once, without humor. "He was going to repay 6 figures, after recovering from a transplant funded by the man he helped deceive." "He didn't deceive Adrien," Natalie snapped. "I did." The room went quiet. There it was, the first clean truth. Natalie heard herself say it and closed her eyes. I nodded slowly. "Thank you." Her eyes opened. "For what?" "For finally saying one honest thing." The locksmith's van pulled up outside. Natalie looked through the window. "What is that?" "The locks are being changed." Denise's mouth dropped open. "You cannot lock your wife out of her home." "This is my premarital property," I said. "She left this morning and removed documents. Mara will send a formal temporary access arrangement through council." Natalie looked at me as if I'd slapped her. "You're throwing me out." "I'm securing my property. This is our home." "It was," I said. Her lips trembled. "Where am I supposed to go?" I looked at Denise. "Your mother's house. The one I helped keep." Denise flushed dark red. Natalie's anger broke through her tears. "You are being vicious." "No," I said. "Vicious was putting me on a surgical table under a lie. This is paperwork." She stared at me, breathing fast. The locksmith knocked. I opened the door, let him in, and gave him instructions. Natalie stood rigid as he removed the front lock from the door she'd painted blue with me 3 summers ago. Denise tried one more angle. "Adrien, whatever Natalie did, she is your wife. A man doesn't discard his wife during a medical crisis." I turned to her. "Whose medical crisis? Mine?" I asked. "Lucas's? Or Natalie's career?" Denise looked away. The drill whined through the foyer. Mara printed a temporary separation notice from the portable printer she carried in her bag. She believed chaos was just paperwork that hadn't been filed yet. She handed the document to Natalie. Natalie read the first line and whispered, "Legal separation. Pending divorce filing." "Yes," Mara said. Natalie looked at me. "You're divorcing me." "I'm starting the process. Because you lied. Because you lied about my body. Because you used my money. Because you chose him and expected me to pay for the privilege." Natalie shook her head. "I chose you. I married you." "You married me," I said. "Then you spent 18 months building a second life around him." Her face crumpled again, but this time her tears didn't move me. The locksmith finished the back door. I paid him from an account Natalie no longer had access to. As he packed up, her phone buzzed. She glanced down. I saw Lucas's name light the screen. She turned away, not quickly enough. He needs you, I said. She looked back, defensive and guilty at once. Go, I said. You've been choosing him all day. At least be consistent. Denise pulled Natalie toward the door. Come on. He's not being reasonable right now. Natalie paused in the doorway. Tomorrow night, she said, voice thick. My parents are still hosting dinner. Everyone's going to be there. If you have any respect left for me, you'll come and explain that this was a misunderstanding. I looked at her for a long moment. She thought a room full of relatives would pressure me back into shape. She still didn't understand. I'll come, I said. Mara's head turned sharply. Natalie looked relieved. Bring Lucas, I added. Her relief faded. Why? Because if your family wants the story, they should hear it with all the characters present. Natalie's fingers tightened around the separation notice. Outside, Denise muttered something angry. Natalie didn't move. I closed the new door between us. Then I turned to Mara. Print the bank records. Denise Mercer believed every family crisis could be solved with enough food on the table and enough guilt in the air. Her dining room looked ready for war, dressed up as hospitality. Crystal glasses, white plates, roast chicken, salmon, a salad no one would touch, 2 bottles of red wine, and a third hidden on the sideboard for when the shouting started. The guests had been arranged with strategy. Natalie sat on one side of the table, pale and wounded. Lucas sat beside her, thinner than he'd looked at the hospital, a blanket over his knees despite the warmth of the house. Denise sat at the head. Robert owned the chair, but she owned the room. Robert stood by the fireplace with a drink in hand, waiting to perform disappointment. Natalie's brother, Caleb, leaned against the wall scrolling on his phone. I'd co-signed the loan for his failed detailing business the year before, and he hadn't made a payment in 5 months. 2 aunts, 1 cousin, Lucas's mother, a family friend from Natalie's church, and me. I walked in alone, a folder under my arm. Mara waited in the car outside. Not because she was afraid of them, but because she wanted them talking freely before the evidence arrived. My phone was already recording in my jacket pocket. Natalie looked up when I walked in. For a moment, something like hope crossed her face. Then she saw I wasn't wearing my wedding ring. Her eyes dropped to my hand and stayed there. Denise cleared her throat. Adrien, thank you for coming. I came for clarity, I said. Robert scoffed. That would be a first. I looked at him. Careful, Robert. Your mortgage is in tonight's folder. The room went still. Denise's smile cracked. There's no need for threats. Agreed, I said. That's why I brought documents instead. Lucas coughed. Natalie's hand went to his shoulder automatically. My eyes went to her hand. She pulled it back. Caleb pushed off the wall. Man, this is pathetic. Lucas is dying, and you're acting like the victim because your wife helped an old friend. I looked at him. How much do you still owe on the business loan? His face changed. That has nothing to do with this. It has everything to do with this room, I said. Everyone here seems very comfortable spending my money while calling me selfish. Aunt Linda made a disapproving noise. Money comes and goes. A life cannot be replaced. Neither can informed consent, I said. Natalie stood. Can we please not do this like a courtroom? You invited me to a hearing. I brought exhibits. Lucas gave the table a sad smile. Adrien, I don't want any more conflict. If you need someone to blame, blame me. Natalie was only trying to save me. That's the first honest thing you've said in front of an audience, I replied. His smile thinned. Denise slapped her palm lightly on the table. Enough, Adrien. You owe this family an explanation. Natalie's been humiliated at work. Lucas's transplant was canceled. People are asking questions. You need to tell everyone this was an emotional reaction and that you're willing to reconsider. Mom, Natalie whispered, but she didn't say no. I placed the folder on the table. The room seemed to inhale at once. Robert stepped away from the fireplace. No, I said. No, I will not reconsider. No, I will not apologize. No, I will not pay another bill for Lucas Kain. No, I will not fund this family's comfort while being treated like a spare organ with a wallet attached. Denise looked horrified. How dare you speak to us that way? In our home. The home with the mortgage payment I made in March, I said. Her face flushed. Caleb muttered, low blow. I opened the folder. Let's start low. I pulled out the first page and laid it in front of Natalie. Bank transfers spanning 18 months, highlighted by date, amount, recipient, memo. Natalie stared at it. Lucas leaned toward it, then leaned back. I set the second page beside it. Credit card charges, pharmacy, rideshare, hotel, grocery delivery to Lucas's apartment. The third, the $38,500 hospital deposit. The fourth, the denied company card charge after I'd frozen access. The fifth, the screenshot. Lucas, once he signs, he can't back out without looking like a monster. You know him, he'll swallow it if you cry. And Natalie's reply, I hate this, but he'll do it. Adrien always does. Aunt Linda put a hand over her mouth. Caleb stopped moving. Robert's glass lowered. Denise looked from the page to her daughter. Is this real? It's not the whole story, Natalie said, barely audible. Then tell the whole story, I said. She swallowed. No one helped me. Lucas tried. Messages can sound harsh out of context. I turned to him. Good. Explain the context. He looked at Natalie. Natalie looked at her plate. I waited. Silence did what my anger couldn't. It made the room understand. Lucas's mother began to cry softly. My son is sick. He made mistakes. Maybe, I said. But he's sick. I'm sorry he's sick. I'm not sorry I kept my body. Natalie flinched. Denise whispered, Natalie, did you really tell him Lucas was a cousin? Natalie's eyes shone. I knew Adrien wouldn't understand. Robert sank slowly into a chair, for the first time in 7 years, looking at his daughter as though she'd done something he couldn't explain away. Caleb grabbed one of the pages. Wait, is this my loan? Yes, I said. Your business loan, which I co-signed because Natalie said family helps family. He frowned. Why'd you bring that here? Because I'm withdrawing my support. His head jerked up. You can't. I can. You're 60 days behind. I've already spoken with the lender, they'll contact you directly. I will pay nothing further unless a court orders it. And if I'm ordered to, I'll pursue reimbursement. Caleb's face went red. You're going to ruin my credit. You did that. Denise stood so fast her chair hit the wall. Adrien, stop this. Right now. I pulled another page from the folder. Your mortgage. I covered 2 payments last year and 1 this spring. That ends. If you need help, ask Lucas. Apparently he's family. The words cut clean. Denise looked like she might collapse. Natalie stood, shaking. This is cruel. No, I said. This is a budget after betrayal. You're punishing everyone. I'm stopping everyone from punishing me. Lucas pushed his wheelchair back from the table. You want me to die so you can feel powerful? I looked at him. No, Lucas. I want you to live long enough to answer questions. His eyes hardened. There he was again, the real man under the blanket. I reached into the folder and pulled out the last page before dinner. My attorney submitted preservation requests to St. Meridian Hospital, the donor registry coordinator, and the crowdfunding platform you used last month. Lucas went still. Natalie looked confused. Crowdfunding platform? I turned the page toward her. There he was, Lucas Kain, pale in a hospital bed, under the headline Help Lucas Get a Second Chance at Life. The description said he was a former firefighter, abandoned by an abusive donor who'd withdrawn at the last minute out of jealousy. It said his care costs had devastated his family. It said nothing about my household money, nothing about Natalie, nothing about the lie. Natalie read it, her face draining. You posted this, she whispered. Lucas's jaw clenched. My friend set it up. The funds went to your account, I said. My lawyer confirmed it before we came. Denise sank slowly into her chair. The church friend at the end of the table pushed hers back, as if distance could protect her from the association. Lucas's mother stared at her son. Lucas, I'm trying to survive, he snapped. So was I said. I gathered the pages back into the folder, leaving copies on the table. Tomorrow morning, my divorce attorney will serve Natalie. My financial attorney will pursue the unauthorized transfers. My company counsel will notify the lender on Caleb's loan. My property manager has been instructed not to release rent funds anywhere but my protected account. The hospital ethics review continues. If anyone here contacts me outside of counsel, I will preserve it. Natalie came around the table. Adrien, please don't file tomorrow. Give me 1 week. Give me one chance to explain without everyone yelling. I looked at her. You had 3 months to explain before the surgery. Her tears fell. I was scared. You were scared he'd lose my liver. She stopped. Lucas slammed a hand on the arm of his wheelchair. You think you won tonight? I turned to him. No. Winning would mean none of this ever happened. He sneered. Natalie will come back to me before she lets you destroy her. Lucas. Natalie turned on him, but it was too late. The room had already heard. Aunt Linda whispered, "Come back." Robert looked at Natalie. What does that mean? Natalie shook her head. Nothing. He's upset. I took out my phone and stopped the recording. The small click sounded louder than it should have. Lucas stared at the phone. I slipped it into my pocket. Thank you, I said. That was helpful. Natalie reached for my sleeve as I stepped away. Outside, Mara was waiting at the curb, engine running. I got into the passenger seat without looking back. Through the dining room window, I could see Denise with one hand braced on the table, Robert pacing, Caleb reading the loan notice, and Natalie frozen beside Lucas's wheelchair. All of them looking at him differently than they had an hour before. Mara pulled away from the curb. How'd it go? I leaned my head back and closed my eyes. They invited me to apologize, I said. Lucas confessed instead. My phone buzzed before we reached the corner. A notification from a video app. Lucas had gone live. He looked better on camera than in real life. That was my first thought, and a strange one to have while a man accused me of murder by cowardice in front of 12,000 strangers. He sat propped against pillows, hospital gown open at the throat, cheeks hollow, eyes wet. Someone had angled the window light just right to soften the gray in his skin. The caption read, "He backed out while I was waiting for surgery." Natalie's voice came from off camera. Lucas, you don't have to do this. But she didn't take the phone away. She never did the one thing that would have actually stopped him. Lucas gave the camera a brave half-smile. I don't want hate sent to anyone. I just want people to know what happens when pride matters more than a life. Mara sat beside me at my kitchen table. It was nearly midnight. The folder from the dinner sat between us, thicker now with new printouts. Graham had joined by phone, and my divorce attorney, Elise Porter, had already sent her first draft of the petition. The live chat moved too fast to read, monster. How can someone agree then back out? Praying for you. Lucas named the donor. Natalie stepped into frame just enough for viewers to see her hand on his shoulder. Still there. I felt something cold move through my chest. Not jealousy this time. Confirmation. Lucas turned his face toward her hand as if it were comfort. Someone I trusted decided old history mattered more than compassion, he said. Mara paused the stream. You do not respond emotionally. I know. You do not comment. You do not message him. You do not call Natalie. I know. Graham's voice crackled through the speaker. We send platform counsel a preservation letter and a defamation notice tonight. We also submit the bank records, the hospital deposit evidence, and your withdrawal statement. The bigger issue is the fundraiser. Mara clicked over to Lucas's fundraising page. The total had jumped from $18,000 to $74,000 in one evening. I stared at it. People donated because they think I abandoned him out of jealousy. Yes, Graham said. And because the page represents him as having no financial support at all, while omitting the substantial funds transferred from your household accounts. It also implies a donation was wrongfully withheld after final consent. That's misleading at best. Fraud at worst. Misleading at best, Mara agreed. Fraud at worst. The stream resumed. Lucas was answering a question. No, I won't say his name. He knows who he is. And his wife knows what kind of man he became tonight. Natalie's face tightened on screen for half a second. She looked uncertain. Then Lucas reached up and covered her hand with his. The uncertainty vanished. I took a screenshot. Mara saw me do it. Good. My phone rang. Natalie. Mara shook her head. I let it go to voicemail. A second later, a text. I didn't know he would go live. Please don't make this worse. I typed nothing. Another came in. Adrien. Answer me. Then, if you attack him publicly right now, he may lose all hope. Please be the bigger person. I looked at those words until they blurred. Be the bigger person. The bigger person pays. The bigger person forgives. The bigger person bleeds quietly so no one else has to feel uncomfortable. I set the phone face down. I want the petition filed at 8 a.m. Elise replied by email 3 minutes later. Already scheduled. By morning, Lucas's video had been clipped across half the city. My name had leaked out through someone in Natalie's extended family. Probably Caleb, who'd posted and then deleted a comment calling me my sister's psycho husband, Adrien. Deleted didn't mean gone. Mara had screenshots before sunrise. At 7:30 a.m. I walked into my company office for the first time since the hospital. Vale Restoration ran out of a converted brick warehouse near the river. 10 employees, 3 trucks, and 1 office manager. Tasha, who'd worked with me for 9 years and could smell disaster through drywall. She took one look at me and shut the office door. I saw the video, she said. I figured. Are you okay? No. She nodded. Good. I'd worry if you said yes. I handed her a list. Natalie's company card access is canceled. I need every invoice checked for charges connected to Kain, Mercer, hospital, pharmacy, rideshare, anything odd. Her eyes moved down the page. How bad? 6 figures from the household accounts. Unknown from the company ones. Tasha's face went hard. She used your business? She tried yesterday. I need to know if she succeeded before I pull everything. I spent the next 2 hours doing what I should have done a year ago. Separating personal and business accounts more aggressively. Changing every online password. Notifying my accountant. Calling the insurer. Removing Natalie as an emergency contact for employees. At 10:15, Tasha came into my office with a stack of paper. You need to see this. I took the pages. Charges to a downtown hotel on 3 separate weekends. Nothing huge. Small enough to hide in a busy month. A medical supply store. A meal delivery service. Pharmacy. A rental car. All on the company card. One of the older cards we kept for emergency job expenses. Natalie was still an authorized user, left over from a charity rebuild event 2 years back. After a storm tour through homes on the east side, she'd helped coordinate meals for the volunteers. I'd been proud of her. I had simply forgotten to remove her access afterward. Tasha placed one more page on top. This one bothered me. A receipt for a hotel suite, dated 9 months earlier. Guest notes. Late checkout approved. Mrs. Vale called to confirm. My throat tightened. Tasha looked away. You don't have to say anything, she said. I folded the receipt carefully and slid it into the evidence folder. At noon, Natalie was served at St. Meridian Hospital. I knew because she called me 18 times in 10 minutes. Then Denise called. Then Robert. Then Caleb texted. You filed for divorce while she's suspended. You're a coward. I forwarded it to Elise. At 1:30, Lucas posted again. Not a live stream this time, a photo. Him in a hospital bed, eyes closed. Natalie sitting beside him, head bowed. The caption read, Some people take organs off the table. Others stay. I stared at the picture. Then I noticed the bracelet on Natalie's wrist. A thin gold chain with a small blue stone. My 5th anniversary gift. She told me she'd lost it months ago. Now she was wearing it in a photo beside him. The old pain rose again, sharp and hot. Tasha knocked. There's someone here. I looked up. Natalie stood on the other side of the glass wall in my office lobby. Exhausted, frightened, furious. Her hospital badge was gone. In her hand, the divorce petition, bent at the corner from being gripped too hard. "Want me to call security?" Tasha asked. "Not yet." Natalie pushed into my office before I could answer anything else. "How could you file so fast?" I leaned back. "This is my life. You should have thought about that before you made mine collateral." Her eyes flashed. "You think divorce makes you look better? Everyone saw Lucas's video. Everyone will see the evidence, too." She froze. "What does that mean?" "It means the platform received a legal notice. So did the hospital. So did the bank. So will the police if Graham thinks the transfers meet the threshold." Natalie looked at Tasha, then back at me. "Can we talk alone?" "No." Her face twisted with humiliation. "You're enjoying this." "No," I said. "I'm documenting it." She lowered her voice. "Lucas is spiraling. He thinks he's going to die. Then he should spend less energy filming himself. That's cruel. That's accurate." She stepped closer. "He posted because you humiliated him in front of my family. He humiliated himself. You took everything from him," I said, standing. "The room changed when I did." Natalie took a step back before she could stop herself. "I took back what was mine. My consent. My money. My house. My name. My silence. He still has everything that actually belonged to him. What he doesn't have anymore is what I've stopped giving him." Her lips parted. Tasha quietly set her phone on the desk. Recording. I realized, in that moment, that I had good people around me. Natalie saw the motion and flushed. "Is everyone recording me now?" People tend to preserve evidence around fraud. I did not commit fraud. I opened the folder and pulled out the hotel receipt. "Did you use my company card to book a suite for Lucas 9 months ago?" Her face went white. She said nothing for a long moment. Then, "He'd just gotten bad news." "Was I there?" "No." "Was it medical?" "He needed somewhere quiet with my wife," I said. Her eyes filled. "It wasn't like that." "What was it like?" She looked at the floor. Silence answered for her. Tasha left the room without being asked. The door closed softly behind her. "I was confused," Natalie whispered. I nodded. "Thank you for confirming." She looked up fast. "Confirming what?" "That this was never just about a liver." Her mouth trembled. "I didn't sleep with him." I looked at her bracelet. "You wore my anniversary gift to his hospital bed." She covered her wrist instinctively. Shame hit her then. Real shame, maybe, or just shame at being seen. Hard to say which anymore. "I didn't think," she started. "That's been your defense all week." "I loved you." I picked the divorce petition up off my desk and held it out to her. Past tense is honest. She didn't take it. Instead, she whispered, "If Lucas dies, I will never survive the guilt." I studied her face. There it was, the truth buried under everything. Not that she loved me. Not that she wanted our marriage back. That she couldn't survive being the person who let Lucas die. "So you decided I should carry it for you," I said. Her tears spilled over. My office phone rang. Tasha's extension. I answered on speaker. "Adrien," she said, voice tight. "You need to come out. There are people filming outside." I walked to the lobby window. Across the parking lot, 3 people stood with phones raised. One held a sign printed from Lucas's fundraiser page. "Save Lucas. Shame on Adrien Vale." Natalie came up behind me and covered her mouth. I looked at her reflection in the glass. The first time I'd really looked at her all morning. "You're going to watch what your mercy cost someone else," I said. By the second day of the online storm, someone had spray-painted "murderer" on the side of my warehouse. By the third, a local morning show ran a segment on a withdrawn directed liver donation that had left a former firefighter fighting for his life. They didn't use my full name, but they showed Lucas's fundraiser photo and blurred all the wrong parts. By the fourth, the crowdfunding platform froze donations entirely. That was the moment Lucas stopped looking like a saint. Graham called me at 9:05 a.m. The platform froze the funds pending investigation. They want documentation. Already sent it. The banks flagged the $38,500 transfer too, After your unauthorized transaction report. They've opened a review. I looked out my office window at the freshly cleaned brick wall. Tasha had arranged the graffiti removal before I even got in. She'd also left a sign on my desk that read "No dying for liars." It was the closest thing to a joke anyone had managed all week. Any word from the hospital? I asked. Internal reviews ongoing, but we've got confirmation that Natalie's access logs are preserved. Good. Graham hesitated. Adrien, there's one more thing. I closed my eyes. Of course there is. Natalie's attorney contacted Elise. She wants temporary exclusive use of the marital residence. I opened my eyes. On what basis? Displacement. I loved you enough to risk surgery, I said. I just stopped loving you enough to disappear inside it. I ended the call. Mara reached across the table and gently took the phone out of my hand. You okay? No. Good answer. I laughed once, and it hurt. At 9:12 p.m. Graham forwarded the platform's notice. Lucas's fundraiser was frozen. Donors would be contacted. And the platform had requested verification of the medical claims, the financial need, and the recipient statements. They also wanted the accused donor's full legal name and evidence supporting the abuse claim. Lucas had built himself a stage and then tripped over his own spotlight. At 10:03 p.m. an unknown number called twice. At 10:05, a voicemail came through. Lucas's voice, low and shaking with rage. You think you're untouchable because you've got lawyers. I know things about Natalie she doesn't want out. Drop the complaint or I'll make sure your divorce gets uglier than your little sister can handle. Mara played it twice. Then she smiled, not a nice smile. Threatening counsel and adjacent family members on voicemail. He's generous. I looked at the frozen fundraiser page for the first time since the operating room. I felt something close to control. Send it to Graham. Already done. Divorce mediation took place in a glass office 12 floors above downtown, with a view of a river that only looked calm because we were too high up to see the current. Natalie arrived with her attorney, a gray-haired man named Paul Briner, who carried the tired patience of someone who knew his client had made his job miserable. She wore a navy dress and carried no folder this time. No mascara, no strategy in her eyes. She looked like someone who'd spent a week learning that consequences don't end just because you stop crying. I sat across from her, Elise on one side, Mara on the other. Graham wasn't there. This was the divorce, not the fraud matter, but his evidence filled half the room anyway. Bank records, property documents, text messages, hotel receipts, access logs, the live stream transcript, the voicemail threat, the confession call, where Natalie admitted she'd kissed Lucas before ever asking me to be tested as a donor. Briner opened with the kind of calm lie lawyers use when they're trying to pass off a canyon as a sidewalk. My client hopes to resolve this matter with dignity. She acknowledges mistakes were made, but she contributed meaningfully to the marriage and shouldn't be left destitute. Elise folded her hands. No one's trying to leave Mrs. Vale destitute. We're preventing Mr. Vale from continuing to subsidize her misconduct. Natalie flinched. Briner kept going. The marital residence was shared for 7 years. Mrs. Vale requests temporary use until final settlement. No, Elise said. She has nowhere stable to live. Her parents have a 4-bedroom home. My client helped keep it out of foreclosure. Briner's mouth tightened. That help was a gift. Good, I said. Then they should feel grateful enough to offer a guest room. Mara made a small note. I couldn't tell if it was legal or personal. With Mara there was rarely a difference. Briner moved on. Spousal support. Elise slid a page across the table. Mrs. Vale is employable, and currently on administrative leave due to her own alleged violations. My client shouldn't have to pay support to someone who jeopardized her own employment while facilitating financial transfers to a former romantic partner. Natalie looked at me. I didn't think the hospital would suspend me. I met her eyes. I know. That was the problem. She'd never thought about consequences, because she'd expected me to absorb them for her. Briner tried again. The transfers to Mr. Kain were compassionate support during a medical emergency. We dispute the characterization of concealment. Mara slid the screenshot across the table. Lucas. Once he signs, he can't back out without looking like a monster. You know him, he'll swallow it if you cry. Natalie's reply beneath it. I hate this, but he'll do it. Adrien always does. Briner read it, took off his glasses, and rubbed the bridge of his nose. Natalie stared at the table. We're seeking reimbursement of unauthorized transfers, Elise said, to the extent they're traceable, from separate accounts and business funds, offset against any marital distribution. We're also seeking exclusive use of the marital residence for Mr. Vale, and continuation of the temporary financial restraining order. Briner looked like he wanted to be anywhere else on earth. Natalie finally spoke. Adrien. Can I say something without everyone turning it into evidence? No, Mara said. I lifted a hand slightly. Say it. Mara gave me a look, but leaned back. Natalie's voice shook. I know you think I chose Lucas over you. I don't think that's true. I think I watched it happen. I was wrong. I was so wrong. I don't even know how to explain it anymore. At first I thought I was just helping an old friend. Then he got sicker, and I felt responsible for everything that had happened to him after I left. And you were so steady, so good, that I started thinking you could survive anything. I told myself you were strong enough to carry it. The room went very quiet. She looked at me fully. I forgot that strong people can still be used up. For the first time in weeks, what she said sounded like understanding instead of defense. It didn't change anything. I believe you, I said. Hope flashed in her eyes. I let it die there before it could stand. Understanding the damage isn't the same as repairing it. Her face broke. Briner lowered his gaze. I kept going. You didn't just have feelings for Lucas. You converted those feelings into access to my money, my medical consent, my family resources, my business card, my body. Then, when I stopped you, you stood beside him while he called me cruel. I was afraid of losing him, she said, mouth trembling. There it was again. Clean truth. Still not enough. Elise moved to the next document. The beneficiary changes were executed before separation, while Mr. Vale had full capacity. Under notary and witness, Mrs. Vale is removed from his healthcare proxy and his primary estate path. The Vale Family Recovery Trust is not subject to temporary marital distribution without separate litigation. Natalie turned sharply to me. So Mara gets everything if something happens to you? Mara manages it, I said. For my care, my business obligations, my family. Not you. I was your family. You were my wife. She inhaled like the distinction hurt. It used to be the same thing, I said. Mara's pen stopped moving. Natalie covered her mouth. Briner cleared his throat. My client may contest the estate documents on grounds of emotional distress. Mara smiled. Please do. We have hospital capacity notes, notary video, 2 witnesses, and a room full of professionals confirming he just avoided a coerced surgery. Briner closed that folder. By the second hour, the financial picture was clear. Natalie could keep her personal clothing, her retirement account, and her vehicle if she refinanced it out of my company policy within 30 days. She would not get the house, not the lake property, not the rental duplexes, not any business equity. The marital savings were thin, most of it already spent on Lucas, and what remained was frozen pending tracing. Caleb's loan was his own problem. Denise and Robert's mortgage was theirs. Lucas's medical debt was absolutely not mine. When Elise said that last part out loud, Natalie put both hands over her face. Briner asked for a break. Natalie didn't leave the room. Neither did I. For 2 minutes we sat across from each other with no lawyers talking. Finally she whispered, Was there ever a moment I could have stopped this? Yes, the first time I asked who Luke was. She cried silently. I should have told you. Yes, and if you had. I looked at her. I wouldn't have donated, but I might have helped you find another way. Her face twisted. That answer hurt her more than a flat no would have. It showed her exactly the road she'd burned. Briner came back. Elise resumed. Papers moved. Numbers hardened. Temporary agreements got marked, disputed, accepted, rejected. Near the end, Natalie asked for one thing for herself. Can I keep the bracelet? I looked at her wrist. The Bluestone anniversary bracelet was gone that day. Maybe she'd finally understood what wearing it beside Lucas had done. No, I said. Her eyes widened. Adrien, it was a marital gift. Briner started. I cut in. Keep it if you want. But know this, every time you see it, you'll remember you wore it in his hospital photo while calling me cruel. If that comforts you, take it. Natalie went still. I don't want it. Then give it to your attorney. She opened her purse with shaking hands, took out the bracelet and set it on the table. Not toward me, not toward her lawyer, just in the center, where the tissue box would have sat in a hospital room. No one touched it. When the session ended, Briner packed up quickly. Elise handed me the temporary agreement draft. Mara collected the evidence copies. Natalie lingered. Adrien, she said. I turned at the door. Please don't hate me forever. I don't want to carry that. Her eyes filled again. I left before she could say anything else. In the elevator, Mara stood beside me. Quiet. That was hard, she said. Yes. You did well. I don't feel like I did. You're confusing pain with failure. The elevator descended. My phone buzzed as we reached the lobby. Graham. We just got word from the platform, he said. Several donors filed complaints after the live stream. Police want to take your statement about the fundraiser and the unauthorized transfer. Mara looked at me. Across the lobby, Natalie stepped out of the other elevator, saw me, saw the phone, and understood before I even said a word. Schedule it, I told Graham. Natalie closed her eyes. Police stations smell like old coffee, floor cleaner, and people being forced to explain themselves. I gave my statement in a small interview room. Mara beside me, Detective Rowan across the table. He was in his 50s, calm in the way of someone who'd heard every possible version of, "It's complicated." I laid it all out, the surgery, the lie, the transfer, the fundraiser, the live stream, the threats. Mara handed over documents with tabs already flagged. Detective Rowan listened without interrupting, which made me trust him more than any dramatic promise could have. When I finished, he tapped the fundraiser printout. Did Mr. Kain directly state that you were abusive? Not in words. His page implied it. His video implied it. He let donors believe I withdrew after final consent for reasons that had nothing to do with the deception. And the funds. The platform froze them after our legal submission. Some of the earlier funds may already be gone. He nodded. We'll subpoena records if we need to. We also have reason to believe the initial hospital deposit came from Adrien's household emergency account without his authorization, Mara added. Rowan looked at me. Who had access? My wife. We shared passwords for ordinary household banking. Not permission to transfer nearly $40,000 to her ex's transplant deposit. He wrote that down. The word wife still landed strangely in official rooms, like the title itself should have warned everyone. After the statement, Mara wanted to drive me home. I said no. I need blood work at St. Meridian. Her eyes narrowed. Today, Dr. Heller ordered a follow-up. Stress spiked my enzymes. I canceled last week because of all this. I'm going. She looked like she wanted to argue, then nodded. I'll follow you. St. Meridian felt different when I walked in as a patient instead of a donor. The transplant wing was on another floor, but the whole building seemed to carry echoes. The elevator doors, the antiseptic smell, the clipped footsteps, the places where Natalie had touched Lucas, where I'd signed away her power over me, where my life had split cleanly into before and after. Dr. Heller met me in hepatology this time, not surgery. He looked tired. How are you holding up? That question keeps getting harder to answer. He nodded, then opened my chart. Your labs concern me. Not emergency surgery concerning, but we need to talk seriously about your own liver condition. I stared at him. My own condition? During your donor evaluation, we noted early-stage liver abnormalities. You were still medically acceptable at the time, pending final clearance. But your latest labs show progression. The stress didn't cause all of this. It may have just revealed something that was already moving. The room tilted again in a new direction this time. Are you saying I might need a transplant? Not immediately, but you need treatment, monitoring, and possibly a listing evaluation if the numbers keep worsening. I laughed softly. Dr. Heller looked at me with something like compassion. It didn't insult me. I'd been about to give away part of a liver I might need myself. That's exactly why donor evaluation matters, he said. And why pressure is dangerous. I rubbed both hands over my face. Does Natalie know? She had no access to your current chart after her suspension. Before that, she shouldn't have accessed donor records outside authorized channels at all. I can't speak to what she saw improperly. Which meant, maybe she'd known enough. Maybe she hadn't cared. Or maybe that was too dark even for her. My phone buzzed while Dr. Heller was going over next steps. Unknown number. I ignored it. After the appointment, I walked to the parking garage alone. Mara had texted that she was delayed at the police station, finishing document copies. I told her I'd wait in my truck. I made it to level C before Lucas stepped out from behind a concrete pillar. No wheelchair. No cane. Just a dark jacket, hollow cheeks, and eyes bright with rage. You really went to the police, he said. I stopped 10 feet away. You really came to a hospital parking garage to threaten me. After already leaving a threatening voicemail, he smiled without humor. I'm here to talk. No. I turned back toward the elevator. He moved faster than I expected, blocking my path. You don't get to just walk away from this. I took out my phone and held it up, visibly recording. His eyes flicked to it. Good, he said. Record me. I want you to remember this. Natalie loved me before you. She loved me during you. And when you're done burning everything down, she'll still choose me, because men like you are only useful until real love comes back. You keep confusing being chosen with being used, I said. His face twisted. She used you. That's what kills you, isn't it? She used your money, your house, your boring stability. Then she came to me when she wanted to feel something. You were never the love story. You were the insurance policy. The words were designed to hurt. Some of them landed, not because I believed all of it, but because there was enough truth in it to cut. I kept my voice low. You knew I thought you were her cousin. He laughed. I knew you were too trusting. Say that again. He stepped closer. You were too trusting. You wanted to be the good husband so badly you didn't even ask why your wife was crying another man's name in her sleep. My hand tightened around the phone. I didn't swing. I didn't shout. I let him keep talking. She told me you'd do it, Lucas said. She said you always needed to be needed. All I had to do was wait. A car turned into the level, headlights sweeping across us. Lucas lowered his voice. Drop the police report. Drop the fundraiser complaint. I'll tell Natalie to sign whatever divorce paper you want. You get your clean break. I get my chance somewhere else. There it is, I said. What? Your real offer. Natalie as a bargaining chip. His mouth tightened. You don't love her? Do you? I asked. He sneered. Neither do you. No. But I loved her once. Enough not to trade her for the first thing that offered me a way out. He looked genuinely angry now. You think you're better than me? No, I said. I think I stopped trying to prove it. Footsteps echoed behind him. Adrien. Mara's voice rang out. Lucas turned. 2 hospital security guards and Detective Rowan came around the corner behind her. Lucas's face changed. I texted Mara the moment I saw him, level C. Lucas here. Recording. She'd handled the rest. Detective Rowan stopped beside us. Mr. Kain. Interesting choice of location. Lucas raised both hands. We were talking. After a voicemail threat, during an active complaint, Rowan said. Lucas looked at me, hatred burning clean now, no performance left. You set me up. I held up my phone. No, Lucas. I let you talk. Rowan turned to me. Mr. Vale, do you want to make an additional statement? Yes. Lucas swore under his breath. Security escorted him toward the elevator. Not under arrest, not yet, but not free in the way he'd expected either. He looked smaller without Natalie standing between him and consequences. Mara stood beside me, arms crossed. Are you hurt? No. Are you lying? Not physically. Her expression softened for half a second. Then Dr. Heller appeared near the elevator, probably called by security since one of his patients was involved. He looked from Lucas to me. Tomorrow, Mr. Vale. I'm fine. He didn't look convinced. Lucas stopped near the elevator and turned back. Ask him why he was in hepatology, he called. Ask your hero brother-in-law what his labs look like. The garage went silent. Mara turned slowly toward me. I closed my eyes. Of course, somehow, someway, Lucas knew. Dr. Heller's face went hard. Mr. Kain, that's private medical information. Lucas smiled, ugly and triumphant. I guess privacy matters now. Rowan looked at Dr. Heller. We'll need to discuss how he obtained that. Adrien, Mara said quietly. I opened my eyes. I was going to tell you. Her face didn't accuse me of anything. That made it worse. They took Lucas up in the elevator with security. His last shot had landed, but like every shot he'd taken, it exposed something too. If Lucas knew about my labs, someone had accessed my records. And Natalie had just become part of a much bigger problem. The temporary orders hearing was held on a Thursday morning, under rain so heavy it turned the courthouse steps black. I'd slept badly. Not because of Natalie, not because of Lucas, but because Dr. Heller's words kept circling in my head. Your latest labs show progression. Possible listing evaluation. My own liver, the one I'd nearly had cut apart under a lie, had become evidence against the life I used to have. Mara drove me to court and didn't say anything about the appointment until we parked. You should have told me before Lucas did. I know. Don't protect me by keeping me ignorant. I know that too. She looked at me. I'm angry because I love you. I know that too. She nodded once. Good. Now let's go ruin their morning legally. Inside, the courtroom was less dramatic than television promises. Plain benches, a judge with silver hair, lawyers arranging folders, people whispering over custody disputes and support motions as if heartbreak had a docket number. Natalie sat with Paul Breener at the respondents' table, looking exhausted. When she saw me, her eyes went straight to my abdomen, as if she could see the disease through my suit. Lucas wasn't at her table. That mattered. He sat 2 rows back with his own attorney. The fundraiser and harassment issues had already started forming their own separate legal weather. His mother sat beside him. She didn't look at me. Elise opened for me. Your Honor, we're seeking continuation of exclusive use of Mr. Vale's premarital residence, Elise said. Continuation of the financial restraining order, preservation of assets, reimbursement and full accounting of unauthorized transfers, and a no-contact provision related to third-party harassment. Breener stood. Mrs. Vale doesn't dispute that the marriage has suffered severe damage. However, Mr. Vale's requested orders are punitive. He controls nearly all resources. My client's been removed from the home, from the accounts, and from her employment pending investigation. She needs stability. Judge Carver looked over her glasses. Why is she on employment leave? Breener hesitated. Elise answered, with permission. Alleged unauthorized access to donor and patient records, connected to a canceled living donor transplant involving Mr. Vale and Mrs. Vale's former romantic partner. The judge's expression barely changed, but everyone in the room felt it shift anyway. Those allegations are under review, Breener said. Noted, Judge Carver said. Continue. Elise walked the court through the whole timeline, the lie about Lucas's identity, the surgery prep, the withdrawal of consent, the emergency estate documents, the bank transfers, the fundraiser, the live stream, the parking garage threat. She didn't dramatize any of it. She didn't need to. Facts laid out in order become a blade all on their own. When she put the screenshot up on the monitor, the courtroom went silent. Lucas, once he signs, he can't back out without looking like a monster. You know him, he'll swallow it if you cry. Natalie lowered her head. Lucas stared straight ahead. Judge Carver read it twice, then looked at Breener. Your client wrote the response? Yes, Your Honor, he said quietly. Elise brought up Natalie's reply. I hate this, but he'll do it. Adrien always does. I felt the whole room read me through that sentence. Not as a husband, but as a pattern. A man who always did it, paid it, fixed it, carried it, signed it, nearly bled for it. Judge Carver turned to Natalie. Mrs. Vale, did you understand at the time that your husband believed Mr. Kain was your relative? Briner stood. Your Honor, my client is prepared to answer narrowly. Natalie touched his sleeve, then stood on her own. Yes, she said. Briner closed his eyes. The judge waited. I knew he didn't understand the full history, Natalie said, voice shaking. Did you correct that before the surgery date? No. Did you authorize or initiate transfers to Mr. Kain from household funds? Yes. Did Mr. Vale agree to that? Natalie looked at me. No. The only sound in the courtroom was rain against the windows. Judge Carver turned to Elise. Proceed. Elise requested the financial order. Briner argued hardship. The judge granted continued account restrictions and ordered a full accounting of the transfers to Lucas Kain and related entities. Elise requested exclusive use of the residence. Briner argued marital home. The judge granted temporary exclusive use to me, citing the property documentation and evidence of document removal. Elise requested no contact parameters involving Lucas. Lucas's attorney objected that his client wasn't a party to the divorce. Mara rose from the gallery. Your Honor, Mara Vale for Adrien Vale, on related civil preservation and estate matters. With the judge's permission, she offered a brief statement, the voicemail transcript and a summary of the parking garage incident. Detective Rowan's report wasn't finalized yet, but the incident number already existed. Judge Carver looked at Lucas's attorney. Your client isn't a party to this divorce, but if he contacts Mr. Vale regarding marital issues, finances, donor complaints, or pending allegations, those may be addressed in appropriate proceedings. I'd strongly suggest he stop inserting himself. Lucas flushed. The judge didn't care. Temporary no-contact recommendations were entered through counsel. Then Briner tried one last thing. Your Honor, Mrs. Vale asks that Mr. Vale be prohibited from dissipating or transferring further assets into trusts pending equitable distribution. Elise stood. The emergency estate documents transferred separate assets and protective authority after Mrs. Vale's conduct created direct concern over both medical decision-making and inheritance incentives. We agree to the ordinary preservation of marital assets. We oppose any interference with separate property trust protections. Judge Carver reviewed the paperwork. At this stage, the court will not unwind executed estate documents. Marital claims may be litigated separately, if appropriate. The temporary financial restraining order applies only to marital assets. Natalie sat down slowly. That was the moment it landed. If I died now, she wouldn't inherit the house. If my illness worsened, she wouldn't control my treatment. If the divorce dragged on, she couldn't spend me down. If Lucas needed money, none of it would come from my accounts. She'd lost the invisible safety net she'd never once admitted existed. Court adjourned at 11:37 a.m. Out in the hallway, people stood around pretending not to watch us. Denise and Robert were there. Denise's eyes were red. Robert looked 10 years older than he had at that dinner. Denise approached me. Mara stepped slightly forward. Denise stopped. I didn't know everything, she said. I believed her. That wasn't the same as forgiving her. No, I said. But you knew enough to ask questions. You chose pressure instead. She looked down. Robert cleared his throat. I owe you an apology. That surprised me. Natalie looked up sharply from where she stood with Briner. Robert didn't look at her, only at me. You've helped us more than once. I called you shameful before I asked what my daughter had done. That was wrong. The apology was stiff, late, and incomplete. It was also real. I nodded. Thank you. Denise began crying. Natalie stepped toward me. Adrien. Briner caught her arm. She pulled free anyway. Please. Just 1 minute. No, Mara said. 1 minute, I said. Mara looked at me like she wanted to object in 3 jurisdictions at once. Natalie stood in front of me, hands shaking. I know about your labs, she whispered. My jaw tightened. How? Her eyes filled. Lucas told me. After the parking garage, he said someone at the hospital mentioned hepatology, and then he guessed. I swear I didn't access your new chart. Did you access the old donor notes? About my liver abnormalities? She looked away. That was answer enough. They were there before the surgery, I said. You saw a note. I didn't understand how serious it was. Did you ask? She cried harder. No. Why? Because I was afraid they'd stop the donation. The hallway went distant. Even Mara went still. Natalie covered her mouth like she wanted to pull the words back in. Too late. I leaned closer, my voice barely above a whisper. You saw a concern about my liver, and you still pushed me toward that surgery. She sobbed. I told myself the doctors would stop it if it mattered. No, I said. You told yourself that not knowing made you innocent. Her knees seemed to give a little. I am so sorry, she whispered. I looked at the woman I'd once planned to grow old beside. That's the worst thing you've admitted so far. She reached for me. I stepped back. Her hand fell. I turned to Mara. We're done. Natalie said my name again, broken this time. I kept walking. Behind me I heard Robert say, Natalie, what did you do? She didn't answer. Outside, the rain had stopped. The courthouse steps were slick, the air smelling of wet stone and exhaust. Mara walked beside me in silence until we reached the truck. I need 5 minutes, she said, before I can speak without committing a crime. I laughed once, though my throat burned. My phone buzzed. A message from Dr. Heller's office. Your listing evaluation appointment has been moved up. Please confirm availability for Monday at 8 a.m. I stared at the screen. Mara saw it. This time I handed her the phone without her even asking. Monday morning didn't feel like an ending. It felt like a room with too many doors. Dr. Heller sat across from me with a team I'd never wanted to need for myself. A hepatology nurse, a social worker, a transplant coordinator, a nutritionist, an insurance case manager. Words moved around the table wrapped in professional kindness. Evaluation, monitoring, possible future listing, treatment plan, support system. I answered clearly, because I'd learned exactly what happens when other people answer for you. Mara sat beside me with a notebook open. Tasha had offered to come too, so had 2 of my crew leads. I told them no, but the offer stayed with me anyway, like a warm hand at my back. The social worker asked, who would you identify as your primary support person if your condition progresses? My sister. Mara didn't look up, but her pen stopped for 1 second. Anyone else? Employees? Friends? A few. Your wife. Not my wife. The word wife felt temporary now. A legal delay. Nothing more. After the evaluation, Dr. Heller walked me to the door. You did the right thing withdrawing, he said. I looked at him. Doctors rarely said things that plainly. I can't speak to your marriage, he said. But medically and ethically, you did the right thing. I nodded once. Thank you. In the parking lot, Mara handed me a coffee. Decaf, she said. That's cruel. That's liver conscious. We sat in the truck without starting it. My phone buzzed. Elise. Final settlement conference scheduled. Natalie willing to sign if the house claim is dropped and reimbursement is structured. Mara read it over my shoulder. She's done fighting. No, I said. She's done winning. The final settlement happened 3 weeks later. By then, Lucas's fundraiser had fully collapsed. The platform had refunded most of the donors and turned the records over to investigators. His earlier withdrawals were under review. His former business creditors had found the campaign and started asking questions of their own. His heroic image curdled quickly once donors learned some of the money had gone toward old debts and private expenses. St. Meridian terminated Natalie, not quietly. The official language cited policy violations, unauthorized record access, conflict of interest, and breach of patient trust. Her licensing board opened its own review. She wasn't arrested. Not then. Real life rarely delivers every consequence at once. But the career she'd polished and weaponized was cracked straight down the middle. Lucas was removed from St. Meridian's transplant program pending review. He could seek care elsewhere, but the records would follow him. So would the questions. Caleb's lender came after him not long after. Denise called once to ask if I'd reconsider helping with the mortgage until things settled. Mara took that call. "Things are settled," she said. "You just don't like the settlement." Robert sent a handwritten note. I didn't answer it, but I kept it. Not because it fixed anything, but because apologies are rare enough that throwing one away felt wasteful. Natalie moved into a short-term rental near the hospital district she no longer worked in. On the day we signed the final settlement, she looked like a different person. No polished cardigan, no careful patient advocate voice, no wedding ring. Her hair was cut shorter. Her face looked unarmored and older. She sat across from me with Breener beside her, a pen in her hand and devastation in her posture. Elise reviewed the terms. No claim to the premarital residence. No claim to the lake house. No claim to the rental properties or business equity. Marital cash divided after offsets. The unauthorized transfers documented, with Natalie accepting a structured repayment obligation for whatever portion was traceable to marital and separate funds. The vehicle refinanced or surrendered within 60 days. Mutual non-disparagement, with exceptions for legal and regulatory proceedings. Divorce to proceed on agreed grounds. Natalie signed each page. Her hand shook, but she signed. When she finished, she looked up. "May I speak to Adrien alone?" "No," Mara said. "Not advised," Elise said. "In the conference room," I said. "Door open." 2 minutes. Mara stared at me. "I'm not changing anything," I told her. "I know," she said. "I'm objecting on principle." Natalie and I stood near the window while the lawyers stayed at the table, pretending not to listen. Outside, the city moved like nothing had happened. Buses, pedestrians, a man in a yellow raincoat crossing against the light. Life had a rude habit of continuing. Natalie held the signed folder against her chest. "I went to see Lucas yesterday." I said nothing. "I thought I needed closure. He asked if I still had access to any of your money." I looked at her. A broken laugh escaped her. That was the first thing he asked. After everything. Not how I was. Not what happened with my job. Money. "I didn't say I told you so," I said. "Some truths are cruel enough left unspoken." She wiped her face. "I think part of me knew. Maybe not all of it, but enough. He made me feel like the girl I was before I became responsible for everyone. You made me feel safe, and I punished you for not being chaos." I looked at the woman I had loved. "I was not your punishment, Natalie." "I know." "No," I said. "I don't think you do. I think you understand that you lost me. I don't know if you understand that you spent years teaching me how to leave." Her eyes filled. "I want to understand," she whispered. "That's work you do without me." She nodded, crying silently. Then she asked the sentence I'd known was coming eventually. "Is there any version of us?" I looked through the open door, at Mara, at Elise, at the folder full of signatures, at the life I'd dragged out of that operating room one document at a time. "No," I said. She closed her eyes. I kept my voice steady, because cruelty wasn't necessary once finality had already done the job. "I hope you become someone who never does this to another person. But I won't be the one you practice on." She covered her mouth. "I loved you," she whispered. "I loved you too," I said. Her eyes opened. "That's why this had to end before it killed me." She folded forward slightly, as if the words had taken the air out of her lungs. I walked back to the table and signed the last acknowledgement. My signature was steady this time. 3 months after the canceled surgery, I moved into the lake house while the city house was repaired, cleaned, and made mine again, not ours. Mine from the first week. I fixed the dock. It took longer than it should have because my energy came back only in measured amounts now. Now I worked in short stretches, resting when my body told me to instead of pretending I could win arguments with biology. Mara visited every Saturday and complained about my coffee. Tasha showed up with 2 crew members and replaced the bad stairs without asking permission. My neighbor, an old man named Harlan, brought over a toolbox and spent 20 minutes pretending he wasn't checking whether I lived alone safely. I let people help. That was new. Not because I'd become weak, but because I'd finally learned that help and being harvested are two different things. My numbers stabilized with treatment, not cured, not magically fixed, just stabilized. Dr. Heller kept me under close monitoring. The transplant evaluation stayed open, not urgent. I learned to live with uncertainty without handing control of it to someone who'd mistaken my trust for permission. The divorce finalized on a cold morning in November. No dramatic speech, no packed courtroom. Just signatures, a judge, and the soft closing of a file. Natalie was there. So was I. Lucas was not. He was dealing with his own hearings by then. The fundraiser investigation had widened after donors filed complaints. The hospital referral had followed him. His threats had become part of a harassment file. His illness hadn't erased his choices. It had only made people more careful about naming them. When the judge declared the marriage dissolved, Natalie lowered her head and cried. I didn't. Not because I felt nothing, but because grief had already finished its work in private weeks before. Outside the courtroom, she caught up to me near the stairs. Adrien. Mara stopped immediately. I turned. Natalie was holding an envelope in both hands. I found this when I moved the last box out of my parents' garage, she said. It's yours. Mara reached for it first. Natalie didn't resist. Mara opened it, checked inside, then handed it to me. Photos, old ones. Our first apartment. Natalie laughing with paint on her cheek. Me standing beside the blue front door before we'd hung it. A picture from our 5th anniversary. Her wrist lifted to show off the bracelet. At the bottom, a handwritten note I'd left in her suitcase before a work trip years ago. Come home safe. I like my world better with you in it. I looked at those words for a long moment. Then I slid the photos back into the envelope. Thank you, I said. Natalie searched my face. I'm sorry, she said. For all of it. For Lucas. For the money. For the hospital. For making you feel like your body was something I could ask for, and your love was something I could spend. That apology would have saved us once. Maybe a year earlier, before the lies grew roots, before the surgery, before Lucas smiled at me through the glass, before my signature shook across estate documents because I didn't know whether I'd wake up owned by someone who'd already given too much of me away. Now it was just a flower placed on a grave. I nodded. I believe you're sorry. Her face trembled with hope and pain at once. But belief isn't the same as return. The hope died quietly. She wiped her cheek. I know. For once, I thought she actually did. I walked out of the courthouse with Mara beside me. The air cold enough to sting. The sky clear. My truck waited at the curb, old, scratched, and mine. Mara glanced at the envelope in my hand. What will you do with those? Keep them somewhere. Why? I thought about it. Because I don't need to hate the whole road to know I'm not going back down it. Mara smiled faintly. That was almost healthy. Don't tell anyone. We drove out to the lake house that evening. I built a fire in the old stone fireplace, not a perfect one. It smoked at first, and I had to crack a window, and Harlan shouted over from next door that I was going to burn the place down if I kept stacking logs like an idiot. I res-tacked them. He approved by pretending not to. Mara came by with soup. Tasha dropped off the revised winter job schedules. My phone stayed mostly quiet as the light faded. I walked down to the repaired dock. The lake had gone dark blue under the last of the light, a cold wind moving over the water. I stood there with one hand tucked inside my coat, fingers resting lightly over the place where the surgical line had once been drawn. No scar that mattered, not because I'd come through unmarked, because I hadn't. Some marks don't need skin. But my body had stayed mine. My house was mine. My money was mine. My medical choices were mine. My future, uncertain, imperfect, still frightening, was mine. Natalie had handed my trust to her ex. She tried to hand him my money, my risk, my silence, and nearly a piece of my liver on an operating table. I'd signed my estate over to my sister because I'd finally understood something. Love without protection can become a weapon in someone else's hands. But the real document I signed that day wasn't in Mara's folder. It was quieter than that, the decision that I would never again confuse being needed with being loved. My phone buzzed once. A text from Mara. Don't forget your meds. Also, Harlan says your chimney draw is terrible. I laughed. A real one, small and rough, but mine. I typed back. Tell Harlan my chimney and I are both recovering. Then I put the phone away and watched the last light leave the water. The lake house glowed warm through the windows for the first time in a long while. I didn't feel like a man waiting to be chosen. I felt like a man who had chosen himself and survived the cost.